What's funny is we've been talking about this for over 10 years, and it's really an ingrained core thought process for us in all of our businesses. And we've had a good chance to experiment with it. The first time that I can remember doing it was a business that you and I owned with some other folks back in the day that was a copywriting agency, and it was basically content as a service. Every dollar your business spends could be a dollar earned if you know how to flip the script. Scalable's E2P strategy turns cost centers into profit centers, whether it's marketing, payroll, legal, consulting, even rent. Today on Business Lunch, we're going to show you how to stop burning money and start making more of it. Ryan, how are you doing this wonderful day?
So good. My question is, who on earth would be interested in generating more cash flow and improving their margins in this day and age?
I'm going to guess all of the people on Earth and some of the people in outer space.
Yeah, we just it's funny. We just got back from our founders board mastermind meeting in Nashville. Great time. So always so cool to connect with with our clients and just get to be face to face with business owners. But it just seems like everybody right now is like, how do we generate more margin? How do we make the cash register ring a little bit more? And sales seem to be okay-ish for most businesses. Like I haven't really heard from anybody that sales have necessarily completely fallen off a cliff. Like maybe they flattened or they're down a bit. I'm hearing out there that because of concerns about tariffs and things like that, that there's some slowing. But what we're definitely seeing is margin compression, right? Yeah. And I think certainly if you're because of these tariffs, that's happening, and it's just impacting every single phase of the business. People don't think about it, but your plumber is charging you a little bit more because their parts that they're doing that probably came from China or somewhere else cost them a little bit more. And so when everybody throughout the economy is getting charged just a little bit more, that naturally is going to compress everybody's margins just a little bit more. So I think this topic is great because it's basically, how do we take our expenses and turn them into profit? What better way to improve your cash flow and your margins than to take something that is on the expense area and make it, profitable instead?
What's funny is we've been talking about this for over 10 years, and it's really an ingrained core thought process for us in all of our businesses. And we've had a good chance to experiment with it. The first time that I can remember doing it was a business that you and I owned with some other folks back in the day that was a copywriting agency, and it was basically content as a service. And so, well, actually it wasn't, it was, we created it as a result of that. That's what it was. Sorry. So we had copywriters that we were paying to create copy for our businesses, and they were not completely full. And so we thought about, what if we offered those services to other people, because that business was an e-commerce business, but we also have this business Digital Marketer, which teaches people how to market. And a lot of people that were customers of Digital Marketer and that we would meet out in the wild when we were talking and stuff would be like, gosh, where can we find good copywriters that know how to write the kind of copy that you guys teach, particularly that Ryan teaches. I don't really teach it. And it was just like, well, we have those copywriters, and it would be like, people would poach our copywriters and things like that. And we kind of finally just said, what if, and hear me out, we just offered to provide the services, that capacity, that excess capacity we've got, to other people, and we actually charged them for it. And it was like, that sounds like a good idea. And so we created a content agency that was basically built on the back of the overcapacity that we had. And we turned these cost center copywriters into profit center marketing consultants effectively, right? That was kind of the place that it all started. And what is your recollection and memory of how that went and what was good and bad about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's a number of ways that you can incorporate E2P that we should talk about, expense to profit. The simplest way is self-liquidating it. Like, just how do we get this expense center to just cover its own cost? So we can talk about some ways to do that. The second way is the group buy. Yeah. So how do we go in and get people to kind of share the cost? And then the third way is the spinoff, where how do we take this expense and actually spin it off into its own business unit, into its own company? That's what we did. And it's the most complicated. It's also the most like fraught with danger, because what you are doing if you're doing a spinoff is you're taking what is currently a function within a business, and now you're turning it into its own business, which means it's going to need its own leadership team. So in the beginning, what I remembered is it was incredibly easy to sell, incredibly high margins, but then it became this drain on resources, because we're saying, okay, who's actually running this thing? Because we can't really have the department head wasn't actually equipped to like CEO a separate business unit, but we kind of unintentionally asked them to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're going to do a full scale spin out, you have to make sure that the team is there and that the margins make sense for it to justify a spin out. Because I believe in retrospect, we could have done it on a smaller scale and probably had the whole dang department paid for, just utilizing our friends, people in the industry, not had to deal with any outside drama, and just had that thing paid for. So that's kind of my recollection, and what I wish we'd done. Oh, look, ultimately we wound up selling that business and it was fine. It was a good result, but it was, I remember there were some sleepless nights.
Yeah, and I think it's I really like that. Effectively, what you're doing when you create a separate organization out of this is you're creating a BPO, right? A business process outsourcing, or an MSO, a marketing services organization, would be kind of the analogs to what we're talking about here. So it's just that rather than going out and creating one from scratch, and that's what you're going to do as your business, you are actually creating one to help you with your business be able to kind of defray some of these costs that you've got. And so I think it's a really great way to do it. One of my favorite examples was I gave a talk about this, maybe 8 years ago at Joe Polish's mastermind, the Genius Network, and talked about it. And then after that, one of our consulting clients, Tucker Max, who had a book writing company called Scribed, came to me and he said, "Holy crap." He said, "This is freaking amazing." He said, I didn't realize," he said, "I've seen," and I want to say it was either 9 or 11. He said, "I found 9 different places that I can turn into new entry points into my funnel by offering the services of our people." He said, "We were thinking very linearly about our business, that somebody wants to write a book. So somebody wants to write a book and they come to us for help, and then we help them figure out what the idea is going to be, research the market, start writing, ghost writing the book. Then we're going to fact check it. Then we're going to edit it. Then we're going to lay it out. Then we're going to create a cover design. Then we're going to create a marketing plan. Then we're going to do a launch. Then we're going to book them on, for talks and things like that. And then we're going to help with distribution." And he's like, every point along that way could be a service, because maybe somebody's already written the book and they just need editing, or maybe they've written it, but it's not released and they want to have editing, or maybe they just need a good cover, or, maybe they just need to get booked on podcasts. And then when they write their next book, they're going to come back to us. But now, instead of only being able to address people who want to write a book but haven't yet, our market is multiplied. Our TAM, our total addressable market, is multiplied, hugely, because now we can get people at any of those points to come in, and all of our people along the way that have capacity and expertise in this can now be entry points into our funnel that allows us to significantly increase our revenues and profits. So I really love that example, because he was so excited, because it hadn't, it was just like this completely new thought of our business isn't or doesn't have to be linear. And I think that might be kind of the big takeaway, is like, how could I explode my business up and say, what if the entry point wasn't at the top of my funnel currently? What if it was throughout and after my funnel? Then what would happen? What could I do? What are all of the cost centers along the way? And what are the products or services that I could provide to my existing customers, or to customers that I'm not currently able to address, to be able to bring them into my, my ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would also just a really simple way to get started with this is to look at the biggest cost centers in your business and just ask the question, how could I make this pay for itself? So I can tell you, in a lot of businesses, if you have any sort of customer care, customer support type department, that is almost exclusively a cost center. That is an expense. It's something that you need to do, but it doesn't naturally make much money. Well, we asked this question over a decade ago. How do we get this cost center to pay for itself? And ultimately, the solution that our business partner, Richard Linder, came up with is, they're sending out emails all day, every day, individually, one-on-one, but there's still a ton of emails that are getting sent out. And now a lot of these are emails to grumpy people because something went wrong, but a lot of them are just general questions. And a lot of these grumpy people are no longer grumpy. We've done a good job for them. And so what we realized is if we just gave everybody a PS, just a standard PS that goes at the bottom of every single email they send, PS, oh, by the way, we've got this event coming up. You should go sign up. PS, we're running a special on this, this week. You should do that. And so every week we basically had a PS of the week. Every customer care rep got this PS. They added it. Eventually we, found a tool that made it to where we could update on our end so they didn't have to do it. Just the addition of that offset, it wasn't quite 100% of the cost of the customer care department, but I want to say it self-liquidated 50, 70% depending on the month and the performance of those particular offers. That's a big deal. And that was just free money that came from asking the question. And there was no risk. We didn't have to spin out a different business unit. We didn't have to incorporate a group buy or anything like that. Just asking the question, how can I get this to pay for itself?